The church cares, and so does the St. Raymond Annadas Foundation for Freedom, Family, and Faith. Hi, I'm Anne DeSantis, Executive Director. In 2015, the Mercedarian Friars came together because they wanted to start a foundation to help families in crisis. And that's exactly what we've been doing over these years. Whether it be something to do with divorce, separation, trauma, job loss, loss of a loved one, or other adversities, we've helped so many families get through those tough times through the spiritual works of mercy. We'd love to hear from you. Please do get in touch with us for our services. They are prayer, priestly consultation, podcasts and videos, and programs and events. We look forward to hearing from you. Just go to nonatus.org and get in touch with me. I look forward to hearing from you. God bless.
Fiat Ministry Network and Patchwork Heart Ministry present Journeys in Faith. Now, here's Anne DeSantis.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to Journeys in Faith here on Fiat Ministry Network. This is Anne DeSantis with another amazing guest I have for all of you. I have Robert Ramos. Robert, welcome to Journeys in Faith. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh my gosh, and thank you so much for this opportunity.
It's great to have you here because, of course, we know each other from a few different ways, but one of those ways is that you were just involved in the Eucharistic Summit that we did with the St. Raymond Annadas Foundation, Patchwork Heart Ministry, and Fiat Ministry Network. You did a great job on your talk.
Oh, and that was such an amazing opportunity, and I'm still getting messages from it. And thank you so much again. Like I told you, that was it's pretty cool to be a part of something like that and have my family see something like that. That was awesome.
It really was. And for people who are watching this show right now and thinking, well, what's the Eucharistic Summit? In case you missed it, it was an online opportunity that we did with over 20 Catholic speakers and authors. One of our headline speakers was a bishop. We did have Bishop William Byrne from the Diocese of Springfield, Massachusetts, Gary Zimak, Allison Gingras from Catholic Mom. We had Robert, Bill Snyder, myself, and so many others. So all you need to do to watch it is to go to Patchwork Heart Ministry on YouTube, and you can look and find the Eucharistic Summit. So please do check it out. You can also simply go to our website at nonatus.org. There's a Eucharistic Summit page. So I just encourage you, because that's there forever. It's not going anywhere.
Definitely.
Even though the event is over.
Yep. I know I've sent that link out. I've gotten a lot of awesome feedback. So if you're on watching this and you haven't seen it, please take a look at it today. Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Robert. Now, you are a husband, a father, a devoted Catholic, and you are the founder of missionrosary.com.
Yes.
And we're going to talk a lot about that on the second half of the show. But since the show is called Journeys in Faith, I thought we could start out with your own faith journey. So please do share with us how you came to follow your faith the way that you do, and really to believe and be involved in ministry.
Definitely. And what a journey. And it's really been a journey for me. I was born in 1979. My father made sure I was baptized within 3 months. He was a devout Catholic in the relationship. And unfortunately, he passed away when I was 2 years old in a car accident. So you didn't really have a lot of time.
So sorry.
I mean, at this point, it's been my reality, but it does connect into our faith, because this has always been my connection to my father. So my grandmother, his mother, very devout, very involved in our parish. Literally his family was the band. Like, she was the singer. I had an uncle on the drums. I had an uncle on a guitar. I mean, he was one of 11. And I want to say
wow.
7 of them were a part of, like, everything that ran through the parish was, our family. So when I was about 6 years old, she grabbed my hand and said, your father was an altar boy and you're going to be an altar boy. And at that point, and again, as a 6-year-old, when you lose your dad at a young age, people kind of whisper and they feel bad. And it's a lot of pity. At least it was for me, right? Oh, poor guy, he doesn't have his dad. And I had my mom and we went through our struggles as a single mother would have. I mean, imagine my mom was 20 years old with 2 kids alone. And she had me when she was 19. My sister was just months when he passed away. So when my grandmother grabbed my hand and said, your dad was an altar boy, you're going to be an altar boy, that was like my real first connection to something I knew about my father. And from that moment on, I always looked at my Catholic faith as a way to honor my dad when I didn't know I was really honoring our Father in heaven. So it really did start there.
Oh, that's beautiful. I know that you and I have had other conversations, and I know Bill Snyder too, who is the founder of Patchwork Heart Ministry, and I met him through.
Yeah,
I met
we
you
each other
through
through
Bill,
the-
and then of course I met you at a recent conference in person, which was so wonderful. And you and I have talked about different things and related to your faith, but I don't know if I ever heard you articulate the story about your dad quite that way. So I just want to thank you for sharing that. So what direction did your faith go into then, say, from that young age, and then as you got into those young years, and then finally you had this breakthrough where you wanted to really get involved in ministry?
Definitely. And there is a lot of, so I don't consider myself a revert. I was never too far away, but there was a lot of, and we've talked about this in the past. I had a really interesting upbringing. So as long as my grandmother was alive, she made sure my sister and I would go to mass. So we went to mass, and my mother would go, but it really was more driven by my father's mother, my grandmother on my dad's side. There wasn't a lot of Catholic faith on my mother's side. I never really saw that. So she passed away from breast cancer when I was about 11 years old. So around that time is where regular mass stopped. But I was able to get, my first communion, and I was able to serve as an altar boy. And so those years were really cool, and there was some structure. But when she passed away, there were other things going on in our life that we had a really difficult situation, right? So around that time, my mother got a divorce, and there was just a lot of vices in the home that were just not the right opportunity for kids to grow up in. So when I was about 14 years old, I started walking myself back to mass. And then I met a friend, and I grew up in a really rough neighborhood, from the Bronx, New York, originally, then South Florida, and I grew up in a housing projects. And walking to mass, I found there was another family that lived in our neighborhood and went to the same parish. They would go to mass at Spanish mass, and although I'm of Puerto Rican Irish descent, my Spanish wasn't the best. But at least if I can go to mass with that family, I can catch a ride. And then I was able to start going to mass again regularly at the age of 14, 15, all the way through. I did my confirmation on my own, and this is a story that's really interesting. Just to give you an idea of just the battle when it comes to like trying to stay faithful in a world where they're trying to be pulled away. I went to my confirmation with not one person in attendance for my side. I just knew. So again, I didn't know any better. As a little kid, my grandmother said, "Your dad's an altar boy. You're going to be an altar boy." And he passed away in a car accident in the Bronx. His body was taken to South Florida because that's where she was living. So I've never gone more than, especially when I was living down there, I never gone more than a couple of months away from going to visit my father at the grave, because she would get me used to, as a little kid. We go to mass and we take flowers to your dad. And that's something that I do
Beautiful.
yeah. And, growing up, because since, that's a really difficult situation, I didn't really realize the impact she had on my life till I was older. Because growing up, it's like, you don't really see her, it's the other side, but when I became an adult, I was like, wow, she's really impactful. Someone that I kind of dismissed, didn't think about every day. She was really impactful in my life. God bless her. So it was her picking us up, taking us to mass, and I was used to that. So when I got of age, a little older, I would walk to mass on my own and made friends, joined the youth group, did my confirmation when I was 15 years old. And I remember one of my friends who's 2 years older than me was my sponsor, because there literally was like, I had a buddy to sponsor me, and his mom took me, and I want to say they took me to buy the suit. It was interesting, and there was a lot going on at home that was kind of contra to the faith, right? So I've always lived in this, like, this is my way to honor my dad. Before I knew anything about any of our beautiful saints, any of the stories, any of the apparitions, I didn't know any of that. All I knew was Dad was Catholic. I'm going to be Catholic and I'm going to do this to honor dad. And then I start to get hooked, right? So I would go to mass by myself, and I had an awesome priest, right? There's always a great priest. And back then
Yes.
I had Father Oscar. I know actually, I think he's running the seminary in Miami now. Last time,
Oh.
yeah. So he's a big deal. He's Monsignor Oscar now. But Father Oscar was just great, right? So I remember opening up to him at that times and saying, "Hey, this is what I'm dealing with as a young guy, 15 years older. Things you just don't want to deal with as a kid, right?" And anyway, so I was going to mass regularly. Then I did get to 18 years old and kind of had the dating. I'm looking for college, and I went off to college my first year and played baseball in a small school. And then then mass stopped, and then a year later I joined the army, and there are no atheists in the foxholes. I
I
remember going to
think you
the
said that
army.
before. I remember.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no atheists in the foxholes. But not
Uh-huh.
that I was ever an atheist. What I'm saying is I got
Yeah.
to a structure where I was like, well, this is what we do. And then, so again, it was, so my faith journey is interesting because I always had an idea of what I felt what my life should look like or what a Catholic family should look like, but I wasn't given that. So that's definitely something I try to replicate when I, got into those years. So got back into the army, again, attended mass regularly and started again there. I wish I could say I didn't fall away, but again, in my mid 20s, maybe I stopped a little bit, going to mass and again, coming out in the world and what do we do? What kind of job do you get? The world's pushing you here. And again, there is no one in my family that is attending any type of service regularly anywhere, right? So when I came back home from the army, it was kind of me back in Miami, finishing college. I went to a Catholic university, so I did walk in. So again, I've never been far from a chapel, right? If I've ever been down, there's always a church door open. But I can't say I was, attending mass regularly the way I was when I was younger and the way I am today. But I will say this. When I was meeting people and dating, I'd ask girls on the first date, "Are you Catholic?" And they look at me like I'm crazy because they're like, "Who acts in Miami, Florida?" Right? So it was always like, again, the seed was planted; it was always there. But those were some interesting years because when I met my wife, I asked her that question, and she said, "Yeah, I'm baptized," and she had her first communion. So it was a pretty cool story. She went through RCIA
Wow.
without me
Beautiful.
even knowing, because I said to her, I was like, "Listen, I mean, I'm a mess. I just got out the service." Really colorful upbringing. I mean, so many things that maybe one day I'll share. I'm still working through how to share that stuff with the world because I know it can be helpful to people. Because again, you're talking about a kid who will walk himself to mass, who had a lot of turmoil at home, right? And we're always being tested,
What courage and perseverance, I would say.
right? Or maybe I was
Mm-hmm.
young enough not to know better. But
Mm.
God bless my wife. She did. She knew that this was, while it wasn't a part of my life that she saw. She knew it was important to me, and she was raised, beautiful family, beautiful parents, very faithful. But she just didn't stop, And I don't understand this now as an adult, but like, let the kids figure it out at 15. No, you don't let the kids figure it
That's
out.
right.
We
Agreed.
guide them all the way through. So she got caught up in the let the kids figure it out. But you know what? She is, again, how many girls do that? How many
Not
20
many.
girls say, let me go to RCIA. So I just thought that was so cool. And of course, from that point on, our life, our relationship, our family has been centered on Christ. Absolutely.
Mm.
So I started building the life that I, in a lot of sense, wish I had.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. It's not easy. And I think your perseverance and your courage, as I just said a minute or two ago, is really, it's just a bright light for all of us, for me, and I'm sure for those who are watching the show. The foundation that I represent is toward families in crisis. So I'm always thinking about them too. And there are some of our audience who are watching this program right now and really getting something from what you said. So I just want to thank you. We'll have to do part 2 at some point when you're ready to share more.
I am, and I tell you, I will make myself available on an individual basis because
Mhm.
I've been there. There's just a lot of so I make this joke, and it's not a joke, but we're not the prosperity gospel, right? We all
No, we're not.
in heaven, right? We're going to get our reward in heaven, but it's
Hmm.
hard. Even now, I go through they're always being tested. It's not a coincidence, and I don't know where I heard this, so I want to make sure I attribute a quote to the right person. But the devil doesn't, rob an empty home, right? So there's
Hmm.
always something going on. There's something with the kids, finances, it sucks, but we still have to continue going. So that is one thing I learned as a little guy. I mean, and it's funny because I would actually bring people with me. So I have a little uncle who he's 2 years older than me, but when my grandmother passed, he was a teenager. And he
Oh, wow.
really, so he went from having his mom, who was a very faithful, strong person, and being the youngest of 11, to her passing away. And I mean, he also had a very tumultuous upbringing after she passed. But I'd knock on the door, make him come to mass with me, and I'd bring him one of my long sleeve shirts.
Wonderful.
Even
Oh,
nowadays, he's
see
like,
how your God is working through you.
"Oh
Really
yeah, like,
is.
don't
That's in a
start
big
that stuff
way.
anymore. We're not kids." When I'm
He's
like,
working through you in your personal life for sure and in your family. But when we come back from the break, we're going to talk about how he's worked through you for something else. And that's called Mission Rosary. And so while we take the break, I want to invite our audience to go to missionrosary.com. Check it out while we're taking this break. We'll be right back here in just a few minutes on Journeys in Faith. He's working through you in your personal life for sure and in your family. But when we come back from the break, we're going to talk about welcome back to Journeys in Faith on this Friday evening with my guest, Robert Ramos. During the first half of the show, he was talking about his faith journey. Like a lot of times we do that on this show, as the title says, Journeys in Faith. And right before the break, I invited all of you to check out the work that he's doing, his ministry. It's called Mission Rosary. And so, Robert, let's talk about that, but also any other aspects of your work or mission that you want to mention. But if you would definitely tell us about Mission Rosary and how did that start?
Definitely. So I touched a little bit on this on the Eucharistic Summit, and I hope you go back and watch that.
Yes.
But it really came again, and God is great, and I'm not going to complain. Everything happens for a reason, But I've always learned, like as I said, no matter what, I put my trust in our Lord and the Eucharist. And even again, I didn't touch on the other part, but I said it during the summit, and I'll say it again now. As a kid in Mass, host is being lifted. To me, that's a miracle. God is really giving himself to us. So as a 6-year-old, oh man, my favorite time as an altar boy, and altar boys out there will probably remember this days, is who gets to hold it, who gets to right do the incense. Yes, that's me. Or who grabs the bells, because can you imagine? I mean, back then there'd be like 9 or 10 of us serving. And I know times are different, but it was so much fun. And I just loved it. It was a place that I just felt home, and I always felt the presence of God. I always was respectful towards our Eucharist, the tabernacle. I love traditions. Even a person who didn't grow up traditional just thought like Jesus came and he left this for us, and we get to do it every single day. So that was always it. And transition to Mission Rosary, it really came out of a place of darkness. It came out of being in the pandemic, having the world shut down. I live in Hoboken, New Jersey. At the time, I worked in New York City, so right across the river. And I mean, there was deers running through the streets of Hoboken. Like that doesn't happen. They're 50,000 square. I mean, this is a square mile town with 50,000 residents in it. And our churches were closed. We had to watch Easter Mass on TV, and I was destroyed. Those who have come across me in the past hear me say this all the time. When my son said, "Yay, we can watch Mass on TV," no, we can't, because the Eucharist is not on TV. And
Yeah.
and that's where it started. Just the desire to want to do more. Because look, I say this all the time. I'm just a regular guy. I'm no one. So who would follow me? What can I bring to anyone? But I do know that I've been able to overcome and persevere in faith.
Yes, you
Maybe I
have.
can help one person, and that's what I thought back then. Because that imposter syndrome kicks in. Like there's some wonderful, beautiful Catholic speakers out there. That's not me. I'm just a guy that's trying to figure it out. And the more you think about it, that's really all of us. But it's kind of hard to admit that in the world, right?
It is all of us, but you're
Yeah.
special. Don't forget. Yeah,
Oh,
because God has a wonderful plan, and we're hearing about all of that in the
and
show, and how he always had his eyes on you and guiding you toward him.
And it really was. So going back to the Mission Rosary, I remember telling my wife I have to do more. And I was listening to a Catholic radio show, and I remember talking about the importance of the Rosary. And my son and I, we started to look for the Rosary online in Latin, and it just talked to me, opened my heart. He's so bright, so he started reading along with the prayer, and I'm like, I got to do something. Like I got it. Like if I feel like this, others feel like this, and there's a way for it to kind of bridge the gap. So I started to work, and the idea was Mission Rosary was a daily rosary app, very similar to a fitness app. And there are a lot of apps out there. And funny story, when I was doing research on it, I couldn't find a lot of apps in the App Store. And I started writing things out. So when I think back to like my childhood, which I touched on in the first part, was like, well, I was baptized at St. Dominic in the Bronx. Well, we know who entrusted, we know who Our Lady entrusted the rosary to.
Mm-hmm.
My
Yeah,
parish
St.
that was
Dominic.
absolutely, and my parish that was so important to me, growing up was Our Lady Perpetual Help. And at the end of the day, I just want to be helpful. I just want to help. I just want to serve. So I wrote that down. And then where did Melissa and I get married? None other than Holy Rosary Parish in Palmetto Bay, Florida.
Look
So
at
this is me
this.
thinking
Wow.
I want to do something. I don't know what it is. And my mom, God bless her, she raised 4 kids on her own. We're all well-established adults. It's like she says, she has faith in God. I want to get her in, but she was a great mom, right? She did the best she could. What's my mother's name? My mother's name is Maria de Rosario. Translate that to English.
Rosario, Mary
of
of
the
the
Rosary.
Rosary.
Isn't that something? I
Oh,
wrote all that down on a piece of paper.
well, write it in a book.
Yeah,
The seeds to go in a book.
Yeah, so I put that down. I ran to my wife. I said, Rosary app. Now, this is the joke, and she gets mad at this. My wife say, hey, can I order a soda? No. So I say, she says no to everything. I say, hey, what do you think, Rosary app? She's like, you should do it. And I go back, I should do it. And again, I'm thinking of the hurt, what's going on. I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty. How can I help bring people together? And that's what Mission Rosary was at the beginning. It was an app that's going to help bring us together, where you could pray the rosary in multiple languages. Again, I just know I want to serve. This is the way I did it. It's available, and this is the cool part too. So I went from like, I'm not an app developer, to having an app available on the App Store where it's professionally voice guided in English, Spanish, French, Latin, Portuguese, Italian, and Tagalog. And I did all this kind of like, I don't say powered by coffee and the Holy Spirit, because I know I didn't do it on my own, but I did it on my own physically. And then from there, I got to work because, of course, doubt creeps in. And while I was working on the app and I was really excited about all these little signs that were coming together for me, I thought, oh man, well, who's going to use an app? And we all know there are big apps out there that are really well funded. And how would I ever compete with these people? So, and then I started thinking about, again, the Rosary. And I mean, we all have our favorite apparitions or different things, but I want to go back to the beginning. So then I wrote a journal where I touch on what the original 15 promises of the Rosary are, right? And I said, let me just focus on this. So we can just get in the habit of a really intentional daily rosary focused on obviously the mysteries in the life of Jesus at the time, and also focus on the promises because we know the answers. We know the answers. We have them right there. So then I started putting the journal together. And as I put in the journal together, I had a lot of time because the guys that were helping me were overseas. So I did a lot of this work from 10 o'clock at night till 4 in the morning. And I'd be going back and forth and then running my insurance agency I had at the time, so it was a really exciting time. We're really busy. And then I started designing T-shirts because Monsignor Michael, where I attend church right now, St. Peter and Paul in Hoboken, New Jersey, always says, don't be afraid to stand in faith in the public square. So that's always ringing in my head. And that's where I came up with coming up with the T. So I'm actually wearing one right now. It says Mama Said Don't Give Up. I call this my pro-life, my pro-everything shirt. But I started designing T-shirts, started thinking of different and the opportunities are endless because we have awesome saints and we have awesome we just have so much resources. But I got to work. I was like, I wanted to just build something where, again, if you're lost and you need help or whatever, so do I. Let's get together. So what a Mission Rosary is, it's you need help praying the Rosary, press play. You don't need to press play. You're pretty good. Let's work on some prayer intention. Let's put things together in a book. I mean, I make a joke when I go to a Catholic conference. It's gray. I go, I made it gray because I know men wouldn't pick it up. And so at least making it gray, hopefully, because you know how much we love to journal and they always or whatever. But it's pretty cool that, you could just, because the way I see it is life it could be hard and we're being attacked. Like, again, we're just being attacked. I mean, just look outside the window. There's always something going on. There's never a perfect situation. But if we get to write it down and see how God's working in our life. So I really became a really big fan of the journal because even myself, going through a career change or problems with the kids or something, and I can see what my prayer intention is and just really see how God works in my life, bringing people to me like you, right? Mm-hmm. Like Bill, if I could take 5 minutes.
Please do. Yeah.
It'd be awesome on Bill. I met Bill at a conference in Rhode Island, and within 2 seconds, he walked up. So it was a charismatic conference in Rhode Island, which
I remember this past summer.
Yeah, just past. And I was only there because of Deacon Darrow at CMAX TV. So it's just so funny how God just brings people into your life. I'm sitting, I meet, I meet Deacon Darrow in Chicago. And then he says, where are you off to now? I'm going home. Well, I'm going to Rhode Island. You should come. And then made a phone call. Deacon Darrow says I should be here. So you're here. And I'm across from who? Bill. And Bill's so it was just so cool. And because of Bill, I've been able to connect with you and be a part of a Eucharistic Summit. That's amazing. Because again, if I can help one person and I'll have more courage to tell my story because and I'm still working through that, right? Because there's so much that I sit back and think, did that really happen? That's a horrible movie. So I'm telling you guys, like it's ugly and it's not, our reward is not here. It's in heaven. Our reward is in heaven. But it's hard to remember that when you have an eviction notice, when your relationship's on the rocks, when someone passes away at the worst time, when something's wrong with one of the kids, right? Life just comes at you. And another friend of mine says all the time, I know God could snap his fingers and make it happen. And then you don't want to get in that why me, right? Why me, right? So I always look towards Job. Inspiration.
Good story. Yes.
I look towards Job because I can easily sit there and say, wow, my father was a faithful man. He was a hardworking man. What kind of life I would have had if he was there? But he gave me the biggest gift of all. He gave me my faith.
Your faith.
He gave me
and your grandmother too. Praise
absolutely.
God.
And as I said, I never thought about that till recently. They're actually buried with each other. And if I can tell if I can tell the story, and I've never actually said this out loud. So, and it was recently that I never really thought of my grandmother as as influential, it was my daughter. So I have 8-year-old twins, and it was probably 3 years ago. It was before the pandemic. So they were 5 years old, and we go down to South Florida, and I take them to the cemetery, and we're taking flowers, and I'm cleaning. I have a little routine, and then she says, and we put the flowers. And he goes, "Dad, who's that?" I said, "That my grandma." And then I put. So I have a tradition as I was a kid. I would always put roses across his name. Always put roses across his name. And she turns to me and goes, "Daddy, what about her?" And I stopped and I go, "She's right." So I stopped, and then right there it hit me. Right there was like a flash of like, she grabbed my hand, said, "Your dad was an altar boy. You need to be an altar boy." She's the one that picked us up. And I never said that enough, because there's always family drama and stuff like that.
Oh, yes. I
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah, so there's always family drama. So I never gave her the importance. And it was my 5-year-old daughter who said, "Daddy, what about her?" And if it wasn't for her, I'm so blessed with these kids. They have such a love for Our Lady. They are really faithful. My son has said he wants to become a priest, but then 3 days later he wants to get married, but then he wants to be a priest. He's 8. I don't hold it against him, but he's
That's
11
right.
in Mass.
But God is working in his heart either way.
Absolutely. I yesterday in his pocket of his coat, I went in there to put $2 for the vending machine, and saw he had a rosary in there. He did that. So that's so cool. My daughter wears a scapular. Like, wow, where is this coming from? Like, right? It's beautiful. And again, and I'm broken and I'm lost, and I have no problem saying that. I need to go to Mass. I need to go to adoration. I definitely need to go.
Gifts, aren't they?
Yep,
Yes.
and I need the Eucharist, and I have no problem saying that.
What a story. And thank you so much for sharing everything that you've shared on this show. I really definitely think you have to come back, because you've shared so much and there's so much more to talk about. And I love this collaborative effort. You're talking about Bill Snyder, of course, who's
Yes.
one of our producers. And you didn't meet yet Fiat Ministry Network, or Kent and Jennifer, who produce and help us to get these shows out there. So thank you, Jennifer and Kent.
Thank you, Jennifer and Kent.
Yes. And just all of it. So now here we are. This is the Advent season. Christmas is coming soon. We do have to end this program, but did you have any final words just for those who are watching? Maybe they're struggling with their faith and Christmas is around the corner. Anything to share with them?
Definitely a couple of things. So I am available, and please take me up on that offer. You can find me, Robert Ramos, on Facebook, Mission Rosary. If you ever want to have a talk, if you want to message, again, I am available. I understand, and I do my best to make myself available to be helpful in any way possible. If you're in the Dallas area, if I can, there is a Catholic marketing agency is going to have a Christmas event this weekend.
Yes.
Mike Schmidt will be the keynote. I will be there. So I don't know if there's enough time, but if you find yourself in the Dallas area, please stop by, say hi, let's have a cup of coffee. The most humbling thing is, so I've been able to do a couple of interviews, but I try to do a lot of stuff on Facebook. And I was down in South Jersey a couple of weeks ago where we met, and the guy walks by me and goes, "I know you, you're Robert Ramos. I see your videos." I'm like, my videos 24 times, and you're one of them? I gave the hug.
Oh,
so again, I mean,
praise God.
Yes. I mean, again, I'm available. Like we're all going through this together. And, if we're being honest, we don't have it figured out. Only one person has it figured out, right? And he's waiting for us in heaven. So
good way to say it. Thank you so much, Robert. Thank you for being a guest on Journeys in Faith. Thank you to all of you who are watching this program. I wish you blessed Advent and Christmas season ahead. Remember, we're not at Christmas yet. We're still in Advent.
Yep.
And please do, the call to action to all of you is to please do go to missionrosary.com. Remember, it's the holiday season here, so you can get those Christmas gifts. You can get the journal, you can get the shirts, you can get the rosaries. So, Robert, thank you so much again.
Really cool. Thank you, guys. God bless, and talk to you all soon.
We'll see all of you here next week on Journeys in Faith with Anne DeSantis on Fiat Ministry Network.
Journeys of Faith is a production of Fiat Ministry Network and Patchwork Heart Ministry. For more information about Journeys of Faith, email info@fiatministrynetwork.tv. And be sure to friend, follow, and like us on social media. Just search Journeys in Faith with Anne DeSantis.